Well, good morning, everybody. I'm Bullhorn Betty, and we cover the case of Nancy Guthrie. Will we ever know what happened to Nancy Guthrie? That is the question that's hanging over this case this morning.
From the East Coast to the West Coast, we are everywhere true crime is. We are asking for the public's help. We are searching in the woods. We are doing what it takes here on the Bullhorn Betty channels to find answers to the most alarming cases we have been watching on the news. I can tell you personally that I have traveled this entire country seeking these answers and bringing that content right here to you here on the Bullhorn Betty channels and Bullhorn Betty Crime Stories. We are happy with the work that we've done. We brought many answers to the public, and we have defied mainstream media in our pursuit of the truth in these cases. We will continue to work, we will continue to fight for these victims, and we will continue to tell their stories here on my channels. Welcome to the Bullhorn Betty brand of channels and the Coffee Club. Thank you for your love, thank you for your support, and more importantly, thank you for allowing me to bring these victims' stories to each and every one of you, advocating for each of these victims. God bless you. God bless America, and more importantly, God bless our victims.
An 84-year-old grandmother, a woman of faith, a mother of one of the most recognizable journalists in America, vanishes from her own bed in an upscale Arizona neighborhood. And a month later, with hundreds of investigators, DNA, video, detainments, and a cleared family, we are no closer to the truth than we were on day one. An empty house, a trail of blood by the front door, a missing doorbell camera, and a family that went from suspected to officially cleared in just over 2 weeks. This is the story of Nancy Guthrie, and this morning we're asking a hard question. Will we ever know what happened to her? Because if law enforcement, the FBI, 400 investigators working around the clock, surveillance video, detainments, DNA, and a 7-figure reward can't crack this, what does this say about justice for Nancy or her family? Let's go back to the beginning. Late on the night of January 31st, Nancy is dropped off at her home in the Catalina foothills after a family dinner. Her son-in-law, Tommaso Cioni, is the last person to see her alive, watching her walk into her home. The next morning, she doesn't show up to church. This is not a woman who just forgets Sunday service. Friends noticed. They called the family. The family goes by the house. What they find changes everything. Nancy is gone, but her car, wallet, phone, and medication still inside the home. The question is, what other evidence was inside the home? Outside, near the entry, there is blood, later confirmed to be hers, and the doorbell camera that should have been recording the last moments at her front door has been removed. In a matter of hours, her home goes from a sanctuary to a crime scene. From almost the very beginning, homicide investigators are called in, a rare move when you don't have a body. Even if the words homicide isn't in the press release, it's already in the room. In any disappearance, investigators start with the last person to see the victim alive. In Nancy's case, that's her son-in-law, Tommaso. He dropped her off at the house. He's on camera with her. He knows her routine. Rumors ignite online almost immediately. Is the son-in-law the prime suspect? Social media and comment sections treat him like a de facto person of interest long before any officials say it out loud. For days, the family in that awful gray zone, technically not ruled out. Every move they make is picked apart. Why did they say this? Why did they say that? Why is he so quiet? Why isn't he in the video? Why is she emotional here and composed there? Then comes the turning point. On February 16th, the staff finally draws a line. He issues a statement saying in plain language that the entire Guthrie family, including all siblings and their spouses, have been cleared as possible suspects. To be clear, he said, the Guthrie family, to include all siblings and spouse, have been cleared as possible suspects in the case. The family has been nothing but cooperative and gracious in our victims in this case. That includes Tommaso Cioni, specifically named in some coverage as having been ruled out despite the earlier conjecture about his involvement. So the internet had its suspect, and the sheriff just took him away. If this wasn't a family job, if Tommaso and everyone else are victims, not villains, then who walked up to that door, removed that camera, and took Nancy out of her bed that night? As the search ramps up, investigators recover video, a masked person, armed, in a jacket, moving near Nancy's home. Still images go out nationwide. This is the moment everyone thinks, we've got him. Within hours, a man in Rio Rico, later identified in media interview as Carlos, is detained during a stop. He says agents showed his in-laws picture of a masked figure and said the eyes look like his. He is questioned, his property is searched, and then he's released. No charges, no public accusation. Law enforcement won't even confirm his name. And analysis tell local outlet what they really mean. Either they don't think he's the guy, or they have nothing that will hold up in court. He's not the only one. Multiple persons of interest have been detained, questioned, or searched, and then have walked away free. A veteran FBI agent describes it bluntly: 400 investigators, 24/7 operation, DNA recovered at the scene, weeks of leads, and still no suspect. CODIS comes back with no match. No vehicle is definitively tied to the abduction. The trail that looked hot goes ice cold. A reporter standing outside the quiet house calls the atmosphere haunting. Media trucks, nervous neighbors, an ever-present sense of something terrible, and yet an unsettling stillness as meaningful updates dry up. This is the part of the movie where the big break is supposed to come, the dramatic arrest, the perp walk, but this isn't a movie. The detainments led nowhere. The DNA matches no one, and Nancy is still gone. Behind the scenes, operations are shifting from hundreds of agents to a smaller, long-term task force. The helicopters go away, the search grid shrinks, the national push alert slows down. Forensic experts warn that the key evidence might not be the obvious blood or fingerprint, but a hair, a fiber, an overlooked trace that has to be cobbled together with everything else to move the case forward. That is slow, painstaking work, and there's no guarantee it will ever be enough. Commentators who have been there on the ground are starting to say the unthinkable out loud. This may become one of those cases that never gets solved, despite everything poured into it. This morning, Nancy Guthrie's family has been cleared. The earlier person of interest is living his life again. The man detained after the mass suspect image was sent home, the DNA found at the scene belongs to someone who doesn't show up in any database we know about. And an 84-year-old grandmother is still missing from a house that should have been the safest place in her world. So I'm going to ask the question that nobody in authority wants to put on record. Will we ever know what happened to Nancy Guthrie? Is this a case that ends with an arrest, a trial, and answers? Or is this going to be another file in a cabinet, unsolved, unexplained, and forgettable only to the people who loved her? Over the next 2 hours, we're going to walk through every twist and turn you haven't been told, every theory experts are quietly talking about, and the decisions by investigators, by the media, and by all of us online that will decide whether Nancy's story ends with justice or with silence, like the Sebastian Rogers case. Well, good morning, and I forgot to change my background. Ugh. Good morning, everyone. Happy Saturday. As you guys know, I'm not going over to my BFFs today. And since I'm not going over to my BFFs today, we decided to come out a little live. I've been up ridiculously early. I've just been kind of, scrolling through the phone, slowly getting up, because it's funny when you don't have places to be, how you just really don't want to get up. I'm just saying, I don't know about you guys. I'm Bullhorn Betty. We're covering the case of beautiful Miss Nancy Guthrie here. And today's topic is the vacant homes. We are learning that get this situated right. Are we good? Are we good? We all good in the neighborhood? Are we all good in the neighborhood? Let's get this up here. Oh, there we go. Let's get that down. Why does this thing have to be so damn difficult? Quit being a woman. There we go. Okay. All right, we got it. Vacant homes. Vacant homes is going to be the topic of conversation today, because we have some breaking news in the Nancy Guthrie case, or breaking news details, I guess, in the Nancy Guthrie case related to the investigation into the 84-year-old grandmother that was ripped out of her bed in the middle of the night by masked gunmen. Now it's starting to appear that there may have been somebody inside the home when the guy was on the outside of the home with the camera. And it's starting to look, there were a few people in our chat that, their theory was multiple people, okay? Multiple people was their theory. And we've gone through a whole bunch of stuff. Nothing was really panning out to this theory until we started getting down to the jammer. And when we got kind of to the jammer, and this is a Wi-Fi jammer, if you guys haven't heard that detail, we'll get into that briefly here in just a moment. And we realized that maybe it's not a jammer, but a walkie-talkie. And therefore, who's on the other end of the walkie-talkie? And what does the damage at the utility box have to do with it? So these were all the questions that we were having initially, but at least recently, not initially. Initially, it looked like a lone person. We didn't know why. We were, pandering to the idea of a robbery gone wrong. We started looking into statistics and reality of the case. That doesn't appear to fit. We learned a lot about robberies that we didn't know, quite frankly, and burglaries. We've learned statistically that they typically hit businesses at night and residents during the day. If they're hitting your residence during the day, they want your stuff. If they're hitting your residence at night, they want you. This was hit at night. Therefore, Miss Nancy Guthrie, they wanted her. So the question is, why? Why? And so now that we're realizing there's multiple people involved, possibly up to 3 or more, now we got law enforcement looking into these vacant homes. Now, I've got a lot to say about the law enforcement. I'm not going to keep beating them up. At the end of the day, I want to make a statement about law enforcement before we say good morning to everybody. I love law enforcement. I am a major back the blue law enforcement. I make sure that my sheriff has everything he needs. If you don't know, I'm a political activist as well. That means I show up to my meetings. Okay, that means I come to my Board of County Commission meetings. I go to my land use meetings. I go to governmental meetings in my community to help shape the future of my community because I'm involved. Okay, I ask you guys to get involved. I don't tell you guys to do something that I'm not willing to do myself. I love law enforcement. But across this country, there's a lot of corruption. We come across a lot of corruption because we're not even in my community, there's corruption here, okay? There's corruption, deep-seated corruption. Good old boy systems, we've pushed them into the very, very back rooms. They're not able to work in the public and in the light like they once used to, but we've got that here too. So I understand a lot when it comes to the government dynamic. And when I see law enforcement across this country abusing their power, doing things that are just horrible to I come down on them like a ton of bricks. When I see something like even, I keep forgetting that, the people that are out there, processing the scene, those are real people, and I understand that sometimes my statements are very critical of the processes that they are doing. I love those people out there working. It's not their fault. It's their leadership's fault. It's their training's fault. It's somebody not going behind them. When you're green and you're a boot, we expect you to make mistakes. I'm not saying anything negative about the people doing this. Yes, it's a piss poor crime scene processing. And at the end of the day, it was a piss poor crime scene processing. The people that are involved should be embarrassed. Okay, that's instead of being angry or upset at Bullhorn Betty for making those statements, do better. Make sure this never happens under your watch again. Make sure when you're out there, you think of these critical steps. You think of vacuuming the front door. You think of taking the bracket off. You think of collecting the mat. Okay, these are observations that have been made not only by this channel, but by many channels and many people that have watched this case unfold. I love law enforcement. I'm going to continue to hold law enforcement accountable, and people that wear the badge should be appreciative. Because at the end of the day, it's people like me that make sure that the bad apples in these departments are weeded out very quickly, so the good ones like you guys stay behind and are able to thrive. At the end of the day, Sheriff Nanos is a bad apple. He's been a bad apple for well over 40 flippin' years. How he has made it so high up the food chain is beyond me, but it has to do with a lot of deception. I will tell you that. He had no business being there. He probably lost Miss Nancy her life because of his leadership. And that is a cold, hard fact that we're all going to have to deal with and swallow. If you're out in the neighborhood and you are upset with me for disclosing that, then I would suggest you go and sign the recall so you don't have to worry about me disclosing horrible behavior from your sheriff ever again. The disciplinary record of this man that you guys have hired multiple times for that county because you failed to do your own homework, that is not the problem of this channel. You cannot sit here and beat up Bullhorn Betty or say I'm a mean person because I'm stating the obvious. And I'm going to just leave it at that. I love the men and women of blue. Okay? I support you. I also support great training and great leadership, which if you're in Pima County, you have neither. And that's just a fact. So, again, you're more than welcome to educate yourself. In today's society where all this information is at our fingertips, we even expect our partners in law enforcement agencies to also use them. When you're in a house, have a checklist. There's nothing wrong with it, so you don't miss anything. Anyways, it's nice to see you, Melanie, Belinda, Paralegal Liz up in the chat. It's nice to see you, Sonia, Deanna, Lisa Boo, always. It's nice to see you. The YouTuber, Bombastic, Sonia, Julie, Downey, Cindy, it's nice to see you. Terry. Who else do we have? Let Them 66, Deanna, West Virginia Holler Girl. It's nice to see you. Little Orange Man. Total Yvette Bro fan. Hopefully I'm saying that right. It's nice to see you. Kawasaki Stacks, it's nice to see you as well. Good morning. JM, Little Orange Man, I said hi to you. Let's see who else we have. Cookie Monster, it's nice to see you. Indigo Faye, it's nice to see you. Good morning, good morning. Sorry we're starting out a little late this morning. I was actually tap dancing around whether I was even going to do anything until this afternoon. I will not lie, okay? I will not lie. See, I don't like this overhead light. It just makes me look too brown. It makes my hair, see, that's more of a natural light. I don't like it above. This is more, the bulbs are yellow and I've got white, stage lights. So it has more of a natural look with the lights here, but I got to change, once I change the bulbs to white, I think we'll have a nice, it won't bleach my face out so much. I don't like it when my forehead's completely white. It looks funny to me on this end, but I'm looking at a box this big. You guys are looking at a freaking screen this big, right? So it's nice to see you. Wonder Seeker, good morning. Who else do we have? Denise, good morning, guys. It's nice to see you. True Crime Movement, good morning, good morning. Alicia, Tammy, hello, Jewel. It's nice to see you, Mama. Maple Leaf, good morning. Phil, it's nice to see you. Good morning, loves. Good morning. All right, I know there's probably more here. Jason, Trish, Tammy, it's nice to see you. Shits and giggles. It's nice to see you. Back the blue. Absolutely, we back the blue. So I just want to make sure everybody knows that we love law enforcement, but we're just, we also know how things can get screwed up. And trust me, moreover, we don't believe law enforcement is perfect, nor do we hold them to that standard. Like, we know they're human beings, right? And so we do have a palette on this channel for mistakes. We don't even expect our forensic investigations to go perfectly. We just, but this was this was really bad. Okay, this is probably the worst I've ever personally seen in my life. Okay, I mean, not just in the history of being on YouTube. I'm just talking about in general. I've just never, what that was probably almost as bad as this, but it all kind of circulates because I even say that about Sebastian. It's John Benet Ramsey. They just did a piss poor. They just. Anyways, there's no point in keep beating a dead horse. So what are we learning? Okay, so guys, we are learning that, they're starting to look at, I don't think the family has anything to do with it. And I'm starting to really feel like, Luke Daly was a good, I can't take him off the list. That whole right hand, injured right hand freaks me out. Okay. I'm sorry. It gives me the EBGBs. It makes the hair on the back of my neck. And even every time I try to find a way to get him off the list and put him back up on the shelf, it comes back down to the hand for me. I'm not bringing him back. I'm keeping him off the shelf. He's staying down here with us. He's staying down here with us. So long story short, I'm not convinced that Luke Daly's not involved with this at all. I'm just not. With that being said, now we're starting to realize that this probably has nothing to do with the family. It probably has nothing to do with a known stalker. And as a matter of fact, here's a kicker. We have never heard Savannah Guthrie ever acknowledge here or in the past that she's ever had a stalker. I don't know if she's ever had a stalker, guys. I know it sounds a little crazy, but not every famous person truly has a stalker. Like, I mean, there are some really, like, you've got some, like Taylor Swift, okay? She's kind of a very sexy, boisterous performer that, some sick, twisted person seeing her shaken may really think that she's doing that for him. People are really messed up, in the cranium, okay? And so somebody like that, yeah, I can kind of see them getting a crazed lunatic that thinks that they're in love with them and can't understand why they won't talk to them. I mean, there's just some sick, twisted people out there. But, Savannah Guthrie, that's kind of, you don't really think of somebody like that having this crazed lunatic stalker that's wanting to go to her mom. So I'm still even trying to look at this, but it was targeted. I think after everything that we're seeing here, I think we can agree with the sheriff, no matter how our feelings are about his performance, about his handling of this investigation or anything like that. I think at this point we can all identify this was absolutely targeted. She was a target. Is she the only target? I don't believe she's the only target, folks. I really don't. I don't think she's the only target. I think they've done this before, but what are we looking at here? Are we looking at somebody that has been hired to take out somebody before? Or are we looking at somebody that was hired to do a home invasion because they thought this lady had cryptocurrency, like the story in Scottsdale? Oh, yeah. Well, it's kind of funny you say that, Jason. I'm behind. Because yesterday I went to several people's lives. And, usually when we're accustomed to going into lives and when the person's live, you go into the live right where they're live at. Well, here lately, I don't know if it's a glitch that they have, like, they made some updates and then they didn't realize it affected this area of it. But everybody, when they're coming into a live after it starts, be careful because you're starting at the beginning of the live. I went into 3 different lives yesterday. And it was already, because sometimes you get the notification, I don't know, weird, like a half hour after it starts. At least I did yesterday, like several of them. And so I went into the live and it started me at the beginning. And I'm like, and you could tell it's the beginning because, like me, I've got the intro. Like I was in Justin's yesterday and he has an intro. So when I knew he was there, you could see on there that he's there for a half hour. You can see him on the thumbnail as you're scrolling through talking. So I click on it and then I'm going to the beginning. I'm like, what? So then I had to click on it and hit the live button to have it bring me out, back to where everybody was. So I don't know if that's just a glitch or if they changed it and that's what they want this to be. But if you guys are coming in and you notice that, check it. If you seem like you're behind the chat or the chat's talking about something you have no clue about, you might want to look to see if you are, off a little bit. Because I noticed yesterday I was off like a half hour in Justin. I was off a half hour in Justin's for like 5 or 10 minutes before I ever even noticed. I don't know why I didn't notice. And then I can't remember who else's channel I went into yesterday, but it was 3 different times that yesterday. And I noticed, I'm like, this is odd because I thought it was me at first. And then I'm like, by the second time, I'm just like, again? And then by the third time, I'm like, okay, so there's definitely something going on here. So if you guys are seeing that, that's, I don't know what's going on with that. Good morning, social friend. The real me too. It's nice to see you. Good morning, Vicky. It's nice to see you, Jason, if I didn't say hi to you. So now that we're in this area of this case and it's starting to now take hold that it's going something completely different, which I had anticipated would much be the case weeks ago. Okay, I kind of anticipated that we were going to have the shocking moments of this case. The shocking moments of this case is it looks like a group of people did this, and we're hearing about a rental property. You know that game Telephone. I think that might be what we're in, because even though I believe there was somebody that may have rented a property out and, there may be some cross communication between a rental property and people moving out, but they're not looking in just rental properties. They're also looking at vacant homes. And so that's where our story is going to kind of line up for this morning, is this vacant home aspect of this case.
Latest on the search for Nancy Guthrie. It has been 46 days now since Savannah's mom was taken from her home. NBC's Liz Courts has been following the case from the very beginning, joins us now with some new details on the investigation. So, Liz, we're learning about some new images recovered from Nancy's home surveillance cameras. What more can you tell us about those specifically?
Yeah, hi, Craig. Good morning to you. We're now in the 7th week of this search, and the work is still underway to try to identify a suspect. A key part of that has been trying to find any new video footage. 2 people briefed on the matter tell NBC News that investigators have been able to retrieve additional images from some of the other home surveillance cameras on Nancy's property. But they say those images, unfortunately, do not show any new suspicious activity or any other movement on the night of the abduction.
So this is related to, we talked about this yesterday, and there should be, I'm hoping that they get to this in just a few seconds.
Now,
Otherwise, it's in the article.
Released surveillance images from Nancy's doorbell camera are the only known images that authorities have of the suspect. And really, Craig, the most important piece of evidence that investigators have right now.
Yeah, Liz, and there have been some reports that there's a potential new date that investigators are asking people about, asking neighbors about. What do we know about that?
Yeah, Hoda, well, as you know, early on, investigators put out that call asking residents in Nancy's neighborhood to send in any potentially relevant video footage going back to January 1st, a month before the abduction. But neighbors tell us that when investigators have actually showed up at their home, they have also asked about specific dates, notably the weekend of Nancy's disappearance, as well as January 11th. One neighbor tells us she was also asked about footage on January 24th. We did ask other neighbors if they were also asked about that date. The ones we talked to said that they were not. Now, neither the Sheriff's Department nor the FBI have said if or why they are asking about any of those specific days. We do know that investigators are still looking at the possibility that the suspect may have visited Nancy's home prior to her abduction.
And it might be multiple, but that wasn't really it. So I'm glad we did hear that because it gave us a little background. But it's suspicious activity. Oh, this is the wrong one. Suspicious activity in the new home. This is related to the actual vacant property. So let me go ahead and read this article. Sorry about that. I had that out of order just a little bit. So Nancy Guthrie's investigation are asking about vacant properties near her home. Experts reveal how it may have been used in her disappearance. And the FBI agents who are investigating Nancy Guthrie's disappearance are reportedly looking into a vacant property in her Arizona neighborhood as the search for the 84-year-old woman nears its 7th week. Guthrie, who is the mother of today's show host Savannah Guthrie, disappeared from her home in the Catalina foothills in the early morning hours of February 1st in what is now believed to be a targeted abduction. Video surveillance captured by security cameras mounted on the doorway of her $1 million home shows a masked armed intruder approaching the dwelling shortly before she is thought to have been kidnapped. However, authorities have yet to identify the person in the clip. And for weeks, investigators have been canvassing her Arizona neighborhood, speaking to neighbors, examining security footage from local dwellings, and interviewing anyone who might have contacted her or came in contact with her before her disappearance. Now, News Nation's correspondent Brian Enton, who has been on the ground outside of Tucson for weeks, reported that local FBI agents may have turned their attention to another target, a property in Nancy's neighborhood that was vacated by residents before her disappearance, it's saying. Before, which is a little different than what we were listening to or hearing about earlier in the week where they were saying after. Now, this is saying before. 3 men left that morning, according to Jason. Thank you so much, Jason. Some of these things that they are talking about is there's one neighbor that moved out before Nancy disappeared, and they're asking more questions about the situation. Enton reveals on recent episode of his YouTube channel, Brian Enton Investigates, not to say that this has anything to do with what happened, but that is something the FBI agents are asking about. While Enton did not share any other details about why the property may have been lured interest from the authorities, but retired Pima County SWAT Commander Bob Krieger shed some light on how the dwelling might have played a role in Nancy's capture in a new interview with Parade. And I believe, you know what, I did have the Parade interview, and I must have, here, you know what, we'll put this up. We'll read that next. Krieger explains that oftentimes cases like this, abductors will look for vacant properties or structures near the home that they can use as some kind of hideout from which they can keep tabs on the person they are following. The former official said that authorities are likely examined any empty houses near Nancy's dwelling for this reason. Investigation investigating whether those responsible for her disappearance used any local properties as a staging area before carrying out this crime. They could look at these kind of homes as possible homes based or staging locations for suspects. It would provide them a cover story to be at those locations at different times, Krieger noted, adding that these properties would enable a kidnapper to remain under the radar while watching the activity of the neighborhood. And it will also show a phone or other data being normal and customary in that neighborhood or in that location, further dissolving suspicion, So a location like a vacant home out of the prying eyes of the neighborhood could also be a location to set up surveillance equipment if anyone chose to do so. It could be easily to stash in a structure or property without anyone knowing. He went on. Also, a place where they can figure out what to do with someone. As for why such a property might only have come under investigation, Krieger noted that the authorities may have well received a tip from someone who has only just remembered something unusual about the dwelling or a person that they may have seen there, adding that the investigators are likely pursuing any and all avenues available to them as the search goes on. And I also would like to state one other thing to each of you is the fact that they've got a lot of leads, okay? So this also might just be an order thing, like they just came across this lead. In the sea of leads that they've had to process. We have to remember that. There's no possibility that they can be processing 40,000 leads in a week, okay? It's just human, not unless they had a lot of agents on it, but we know the task force has dwindled down as these weeks have gone on. The interest of this case has dwindled down. Now, again, it is pretty much and predominantly left to the social media keeping the attention out there with the content creators still with the eyes on that property. It is keeping this case still top of mind to many people. But at the end of the day, we all have to acknowledge that this case is not the same case we had weeks ago. The case is losing interest by the day. Chris Nanos has a recall, so there's a lot of other distractions going on. The news and updates are trickling in so scattered and still not formulating really an idea of what we're dealing with here. We have no perspectives. We've got no Nancy. We've got no suspects. We've got no cars. And we feel like, a lot of us at least, feel like some of the stuff that they're doing 7 weeks later should have been done first weeks of this case. So I feel like still we're in a sea of, this is, investigation 101. Why weren't these things looked at? Or maybe they were looked at preemptively, but nothing deeply. And maybe now that the case is slowed up a little bit, maybe now they're saying, having some teams and just focusing on certain investigative avenues. Maybe that's kind of where we're at here, because it sounds like this is the FBI taking over this kind of ground search. It sounds like I haven't really heard anything about the sheriff or the county sheriff really investigating. I keep hearing about FBI agents doing this, FBI agents doing that. We're hearing, Chris Nanos, even early on in the case, he was going to basketball games, I believe. He's been going to the gym. It seems like he's not really too concerned about investigating this case. So it seems like, it's just the FBI doing it. And the problem with the FBI doing it is that the FBI doesn't release shit. Okay. That's why, we love the FBI being involved, because we know that at least they're getting the best of the best search and research and the best possible chance of being solved. But in the same lens, we want the FBI involved, but just remember, once the FBI gets involved, everything gets shut down. We don't get shit Okay, we really don't. It's friends of friends in the department that gets, little nuggets of information that they're able to go and use as a leak, as a source for, a news story, and that's how they make their money. So they have good connections with their friends at the bureau. But other than that, we ain't getting squat. When the feds do this, we don't get shit. So anyways, what we've learned about this case so far is there's new images, new videos. It sounds like they've got everything that they need from the cameras, even though they haven't told us. Remember, they're not going to tell us everything, and they're going to use word salad as much as they can to keep a lot of information from us. So it sounds like they have all the footage for all the cameras. That's what we wanted. So I don't think that there was any internet outage in the area. I know they had to look at it because it was a possibility, because one of the neighbors' 2 cameras went out allegedly. But it doesn't seem like that would be the case if they were able to get all the images for the cameras. I'm hearing that it's all the images. So we'll find out if I misunderstood that, or if it's truly all the images and videos from those cameras. If it's all the images and videos from the camera, I'm almost confident they are seeing what happened to Miss Nancy Guthrie. They're going to be able to see, hopefully with one of the cameras, whether she left that house alive or not, or what they can hear on those cameras. Most of those cameras do have sound, let's hope, and maybe they pick something up. But right now, they're basically telling us they haven't found anything alarming. Okay. Maybe they haven't gotten to that area. We don't know how far back they were able to get in the camera, and they may be looking at, weeks and weeks and weeks before the actual incident, just making sure that they can see, is anybody weird hanging out, just doing preliminary work before they get into the meat and potatoes of what happened that night. We also learned about the teens that were arrested for an extortion. They were extorted into a home invasion in Scottsdale, Arizona. And there's this person named Red and 8. We don't know if they've ever been identified. And have they done this again? And is Nancy Guthrie a victim of this signal extortion that hits teenagers and convinces them to do home invasions to steal $66 million worth of Bitcoin wallet? How did the front door close? Many people have asked that. We haven't received any other updated on the timeline. They're still sticking with the timeline. The 2 backpack guy. There was a car behind there, and it's kind of weird because I can see the car behind people's still images to me. But that original footage that I saw, there was no... I got to go back and look at the original footage, but I didn't see the car as clear. I saw a white fence back there, but now I'm seeing a perfectly identified, so I got to go back to the original footage and look at that. We heard about the rental house that people left, but they're not saying they're looking at rental houses in this article. They're saying they're looking at vacated houses in this article, which I figure is pretty interesting. The vacated houses in this article. And we're starting to get some information about the tattoo. There is one tattoo artist that believes the tattoo that's peeking out through the glove and the wrist is a scorpion tail. That's what they believe. And so we looked up what a scorpion represents, and obviously it's attributed to, Hispanic type of gangs, Mexican gangs, cartels and stuff like that. Some either here in the state, in Mexico, and as far as Canada in some respects. So very interesting. We're also looking at gangs, El Verga, La Verga, and El Mencho. Were they hired? I'm not sure if they would target her without somebody perking their curiosity. So we're still a long way from where we need to be in this case to really I'd start honing in on a suspect or a person of interest. We have nothing to work with. We still don't have a vehicle, and we're rounding into our 2nd month. And, I don't understand, like, even FBI, they're out there. Usually at this point, they would, if they haven't gotten a lead or a lead on the pulse or anything like that, they usually start trickling out some information to generate some more interest and, generate some more leads that they can utilize to try to find the suspect or try to find Nancy Guthrie. And so far, we don't have any of that. We have nothing, even from the FBI. I would think at this point they would have, a vehicle of interest that they might be looking for, that they could use some help. It just, I'm just not. I'm starting to feel a little uncomfortable with how long this is dragging out without anybody, providing us any details to help us look for the individual. It really does remind me a lot of Morin. What was her name? Something Morin. She was a young lady, Rachel Morin, I think is her name, Rachel Morin. Anyway, she was in the Ma and Pa Heritage Trail. She was bludgeoned by an illegal person that came here illegally. He had essayed a young girl in California and made it all the way over to the Ma and Pa Heritage Trail and arred and bludgeoned Rachel Morin to death when she was just out there just to try to get some exercise, leaving 5 orphaned children that had to be separated among families so they don't even get to live with their own siblings because of what this monster did. And the police out there chose to wait 6 months before releasing a possible sketch of this guy. They waited literally 5 or 6 months. And it's like, why? This man had already fled the area. Could that have helped somehow? Hey, Hobo's mom. Thank you for all you do. Aw, thank you. Thank you for your love and support. 14 months. Because I'm a love machine. Ow! 6 months, though. Think about what we could have done with that, because when the case was hot and heavy, all eyes were on it, right? And you guys, we've been around the block with the true crime genre. Think about it. When you have like everybody's really hook, line, and sinker into the case, that's when you drop major stuff to get so many eyes on it. They waited until the case died down, and then they released the image where we didn't have but half, if not a quarter, of what kind of attention we had early on in the case. These are mistakes. These are major mistakes with law enforcement that we see day in and day out because they want to keep things close to the chest. And it's like, you got to the finish line, but wouldn't it have been nicer to have gotten to the finish line maybe a year or two earlier or a decade earlier or something like that? Wouldn't it have been nice to bring justice a lot sooner? And not only that, but this was a violent man that hurt a child and then bludgeoned a woman to death, and you left him on the streets all these many more months because you didn't want to show something like a sketch of this monster. This is the stuff that we face with law enforcement all the time that just unnerves me. It makes no sense. Somewhere in their thick skull, they think this is good policing. And I gotta say, it's very frustrating. So it's like, we've got these footage here. Is there a car in that driveway? If so, what is the make and model of that car? And let's get working. It's been long enough where we don't even have the make and model of a vehicle that they believe she was transported in. Was she transported or was she walked? I mean, somebody's got to be able to answer that. How does that go to the integrity of the investigation? How? So it's like these are the things that just make me feel like we're going to be here into perpetuity on this case, because I just don't understand law enforcement. It just seems like no matter how hard we look, they just do not want to solve this case, or they want to take the long way to do it. Like, there's so many easier ways to do it. Investigators searching for the 84-year-old Nancy Guthrie are now turning their attentions to recently vacated or vacant homes near where she disappeared. In an exclusive interview with Parade, Pima County SWAT Commander Bob Krieger, I think we watched him. I think he was on JLR's. I think he did an interview on JLR. I think somebody in my chat came here and told me about this, and we stopped and went and listened to him. And he's the one that said he didn't believe this case was botched. You know, that, yeah, there's some problems, but not botched. I think it was that one guy. I remember hearing Bob Krieger. I think that was him, but I could be wrong. So Bob Krieger explains that the properties, like vacant houses, can serve as a home base or a staging location for suspects, allowing them to blend into the area while quietly observing the neighborhood routines. The insight comes as authorities continue to track down new leads more than 6 weeks into the case, underscoring how even seemingly minor details can take on new significance as the investigation evolves. And you know what, guys? This is what I'm going to say about the vacant homes. And I know you're not going to like hearing this, but I'm still going to say it. I think this is going to ultimately be a dead end. And the reason why I think this is ultimately going to be a dead end is because how my brain is processing this work. Now, it may not be a dead end. You know, it's a little premature for me to make this assessment, but I'm going to make it anyways because I don't mind. I don't, you know, when things are up in the air and stuff like that, I don't mind making assessments. You know, I'm going to be right or I'm going to be wrong. Thank you guys for continue to pray for the E family. If somebody can throw the E's, if anybody wants to help out financially for the E's, if one of my mods or all my mods can start throwing some stuff down in the chat for them, I'd greatly appreciate it. I don't think this is going to pan out because I feel like if they were able to stay in a vacant home or really monitor the neighborhood, then the neighbor wouldn't have seen them out scoping the streets, walking the streets, you know, in the clothes. They would have worked harder to blend in a little better. And the fact that they were only observed on the weekend kind of feels like they had day jobs and they wouldn't have been that. So that's just kind of my overall impression based upon everything. I'm not kind of buying that. I still think that there's a vehicle. I think there's a vehicle. Did they happen to see somebody moving out and decided to go and stage, you know, that night? Maybe. But I don't think it's going to be. I think it's going to ultimately be a coincidence, potentially. You know, I don't know much details about it. If something comes up that's like, maybe I was wrong about that, then we'll figure that out. Oh, my surgery. Oh, you bionic woman, you. Then we'll figure out, it says, Giggles, how can you put her in Arizona when she was in New York? Yeah, she. If you're talking about Savannah was in New York recording. We know where she was at the time her mom disappeared. And we know where Cameron was because he lives in Vermont. So those two siblings, the only siblings that had motive, means, and opportunity would be Annie and Tommaso. But again, what we're looking at here is not a family quabble. It's not a family hit. It's not, this is something a little bit different. So, just FYI, you know, and this is, I know sometimes you guys don't agree with me, and sometimes I'm wrong. So I don't expect you just to, you know, automatically agree with me in every given turn in a case. But, when I'm pretty strong, like I was with Tommaso, you know, sometimes it's just a trust and believe type of process, you know, just I've been doing this a long time. I know what I'm looking for when I'm looking into people. Sometimes I can be fooled. Yes. So you always want to fact check me, you know, you want to keep my feet to the fire and make sure I'm doing my job. But I really never got behind Tommaso. Nobody could ever really answer the questions. Everybody kept saying all these horrible things about their finances, about the gambling. But when you ask them for receipts, oh, well, you know, this person said it. I don't care who said it. If somebody says something, they can produce something to support it. Okay. Occasionally you should listen. Occasionally you're going to have to trust people with sources. Occasionally, it shouldn't be every time a case is out that all you get is sources. Okay. I'm sorry that's not how it works. Okay. So if every time we have new breaking cases and this person that's getting all the attention only has sources every single time, there's something wrong. Okay, you should be able to have people to talk about this stuff that aren't sources, that just give you their experiences, so you can formulate your own opinions. So just be very careful about that. I don't know what to say. I was never really on board with Tommaso. I was never on board. I refused to even talk about the bandmate, and people hated me for it. People hated me for it. And I even said, when new information comes out, I'll talk about it. But I'm not doing this with a little bit of limited information. Oh, you think that this is the person, so it has to be true. We don't play like that over here on this channel. We have to have substance. We have to have, I don't mind speculation, but I'm not clubbing somebody over the head or throwing their entire background up on the screen just because we think they could have done it. Now, if there's a little more than we think they could have done it, then that's up for scrutiny. We'll go down that avenue. And I know other people were doing it, so what difference does it make? Well, it makes a difference to me. And so I understand that you guys were frustrated at me, but you know what? Look at where we are today. Many of you guys are starting to come around to the fact that it wasn't Tommaso. And it's like, I love the dedication, but sometimes y'all yourselves need to take constructive criticism, because some of the messages I got weren't very, very nice. So, and here we are full circle, and we're starting to see that this is more in line with a gang of people, or, at least more than two or more, I should say, to be more accurate. We were having some people early on in this, give us these wild theories that they thought that this was a gang type of mentality. We could never get to the why factor, but at the end of the day, some of these wild things are starting to hold more water than the more logical things when it comes to this case. This case is defying logic. So we've got to be open-minded, and I am open-minded, but when I kind of know that you guys see how stubborn I am. I'm very stubborn when I know that it's not going to pan out. Like it does. I know you guys have seen me work, and I don't mind throwing people under the bus. You guys have seen me do it, but I don't do it innocently. I don't just do it to do it. Okay. If somebody really is, and I just don't feel like they've done anything wrong, I'm not going to put them on blast. Okay. It just goes against me morally. If somebody brings it on themselves, you got a hate channel that's sitting out here throwing everybody's business out here. Well, then, yeah, I'm going to throw your business out here because, just desserts, right? Just desserts. But when we're dealing with these cases, there has to be more than feelings for me to, basically scrutinize somebody's life, which is putting them in a public spotlight on a public stage. These people have families, children, jobs, and these things can affect them. So I know that for a really long time, you guys think I just willy-nilly do things. I do not. There's always been a strategy. That's why we have a high batting average on this channel. We're very selective. We're very cautious. If we know, we know, and we don't mind putting people on blast when we know. Okay? We have no problem. We'll stand on that hill by ourselves when we know. But here we don't know. Even the suspects. That's why I've been very cautious about Luke. I don't want to contribute to any additional pain and suffering that he might be going through, especially if he had nothing to do with this. But for me, Luke has a hurt right hand. We heard that the person might have a hurt right hand. He's on my list, okay? He's not coming off my list until he calls Betty. I don't even need to put him on the record and explain to me how he hurt his right hand. Luke, if you're out there and you don't want me to going down this road with you, which I'm not like beating you over the head, but I'm not shying away from the fact that I think that you might have something to do with this. Now, if you can justify why you have a hurt, swollen right hand, I'd love to hear it. And maybe you'll convince me that, you know what, you had nothing to do with it. So if you're watching, I'm completely open-minded, but your hurt right hand has me very, very, very concerned. You can reach out to me to bullhornbetty@gmail.com, bullhornbetty@gmail.com. I would personally like to speak to you on the phone, but if I can just get an email or a statement from you, I'm good with that as well. I'm just saying, I just want to know how you got a hurt right hand. Your right hand is hurt. How did it happen? How did it happen? So if I can get justification on that, maybe he will go back on the shelf. But for right now, he has a hurt right hand. He's in the area. I'm looking for somebody that knows those back roads like the back of their hand. He's lived there for a really long time. He looks like the guy to me, okay? He looks like the guy to me. But you know what? Even with that, I've never accused this man of doing anything to this woman. And I made it very, very, very clear on this channel that we are not accusing him. But he is off the table. I am scrutinizing him, and I'm going to continue to scrutinize him until I find out what happened to his hand. If his hand was hurt, if his hand was not hurt before that night and hurt after that night, he's my guy. Okay? It's just that simple. He's my guy. He's our guy. So what is going on with this vacant property? Maybe he was in the neighborhood. Maybe he put his friends up in the vacant house because he knew it was vacant. He knew nobody was staying there. He knew the people because he's lived in the neighborhood his whole life. We don't know. We don't know. But I do feel like this person or persons, if they were in that area, they were closer than we think. And I've said that. But this right here, the whole weekend thing kind of makes me feel like we're going to find out this whole vacant property angle. It's going to be a nothing burger. Like, I feel like I'm already preemptively feeling like this is going to be a nothing burger. But, just because I feel it with the limited information that I have right now doesn't mean it couldn't turn into something, right? If we found out that truly, in fact, something holds water, that these people moved into this house under false pretenses like a month or two ago and has been, shown, we believe that the major the major planning happened between the end of last year and into January of this year. That's what we believe. So this wasn't a willy-nilly situation. We've got enough Google Trends information to show us that this may have actually started to be hatched around the middle of July 2025. And the rubber really started meeting the road at the end of 2025, around October, November, around there. It seems like it took hold. And then by January, the mid of January, right before this whole situation, weeks before this situation happened, now we've got Nancy's address being plugged into a map. We've got, real hardcore, it looks like they've made their decision. Now they're going to start acting. So, the bulk of the planning happened in 2025. So are we going to find out that this home did have tenants and they signed a lease back in the end of 2025 and just woke up in the middle of the night and just moved out of the house? Is that what we're going to find out? It's possible, but I kind of feel that this is going to end up being a dead end. These people are not going to be responsible. This is just, a lead, something that needs to be followed through with. But I think ultimately it's not going to pan out. I really don't think it's going to pan out. I think it's going to be, because if that's the case, I don't see them. Why are they walking up and down the road? And if they had a staging house, why is their vehicles being spotted out in the road, parked on the side of the road? So I just feel like the whole thing with the vacant houses are going to ultimately pan out to be nothing, a nothing burger. Just my opinion. So, but hey, you never know. You never know. All right, guys, I wasn't planning on staying on here very long today. Not this morning. Maybe I'll be back later this afternoon. It's kind of a just kind of a melancholy day for me. And so I'm just going to kind of chill and take a personal day and just, I don't know. I don't know. Just take some breaths. So if I come on here, it's because there's something probative. If I don't come on here, it's because I don't really have a whole lot to say today. So, tomorrow we'll be back and I'm sure I'll be feeling a lot better, but, anyways, that's all I really have to say. So we'll see what we got going on. If you guys have any questions, you guys want me to look at a perspective, like, it looks like Mike's got a question about Miguel. I don't know who Miguel is. If you want to send me an email, you can send that to bullhornbetty@gmail.com, bullhornbetty@gmail.com. I'm happy to take a look at it. I'm happy to, do some research on it and do a show about it. But if you guys want shows about different topics, send me the topics of conversation you want me to do the shows about. All right. Talk to you later, and we'll see you soon.